Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unpacking Ecommerce. I'm your host, Cayden Cribbs from QuickBox Fulfillment. As we head into the busiest time of the year for e-commerce, the peak season, we know that brands are gearing up to handle everything from massive order volumes to navigating complex logistics. So whether you're a seasoned e-commerce pro or just looking to make this year's peak your best one yet, we've got you covered. Today, I'm joined by some incredibly knowledgeable guests who bring both strategic insights and practical advice on peak season readiness. Let's start off with our first guest from Passport Shipping. We have Kat Sun. Shipping is a make or break element during the peak, and she will discuss ways to overcome the potential hurdles of international shipping, manage costs, and keep customers satisfied no matter where they are in the world. Next, joining us from Post Pilot, we have Michael Epstein. If you're interested in retaining your customers and making sure they come back even after the holiday rush, Post Pilot has you covered. Michael will share some of the great insight strategies to engage customers, boost loyalty, and maximize those peak season gains. And finally, we have QuickBox's very own CFO, Brennan McMullen. With his extensive experience managing operational efficiency and ensuring smooth financial planning during high volume periods, he'll give us a look behind the curtain at what it takes to stay resilient during peak. All of our guests are here to make sure you have all the right tools and insights to crush it this peak season, so let's dive right in. So I'll start with the first question here, which will be, what is your role play in the peak season time for your customers? And actually, Kat, if you want to start us off with that question, we'll look at you.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm the VP of Ops here at Passport. Have been here for 6+ years. When we started at like 10 people, now we're 180 people. I think what we've always really tried to be is kind of an extension of your operations team. International shipping is incredibly complex and nuanced. 6 years in, still have questions that I'm like, I've never really seen them before. So like, how can we expect our brands to know the really nuanced, esoteric, like regulatory compliance thing that, I don't know, Japan just launched, or recently Mexico. So I think in peak, what we can do is really make sure, if we're doing our job right, that our customers don't feel the impact of international shipping and all those different nuances in that, those longer delivery times and transit times, and really hope that during peak they actually don't notice that there's a difference in international, and they're just busy fulfilling all their orders and international is running as smoothly as possible. So if we're doing our job right, hopefully they don't have to reach out to us too much. I think as people in operations know, when they reach out to you, there's probably an issue.
Right, for sure. Yeah. It's definitely a time where you want to make sure like they have less on their plate. So I'm glad that you guys are able to step in there and kind of take that off of them. Michael, what about you?
I've been in ecom for a long time. This is my 25th Black Friday, I think. So I've seen a lot of these things, and it's always crazy. Postpilot specifically is a direct mail platform, so actual physical mail. And one of the key roles that we play around the holiday season in particular is helping brands cut through all the digital clutter when they're trying to get their Black Friday messages out to both their customers and prospects. So, of course, over this peak season, CPMs go through the roof as competition is driving up ad costs. Email inboxes are overflowing. People are getting crushed with SMS, and now you add the election on top of all of that, and it's even worse. So direct mail is a particularly effective channel to help you make sure that you're reaching basically 100% of your customers and prospects over this really busy period, and at a predictable cost because the price of postage is fixed.
Yeah. On that note, we'll go to our postage king, Brennan here. How do you handle going into peak?
Well, I mean, the volume flux during peak is definitely something we think about year round, but it ultimately just starts with what Kat and Michael said on just making sure the customer experience is sound, despite all of the challenges. So on the direct to consumer side, that's making sure that inventory planning, inventory placement is sound and in place. It's making sure that you have a good carrier setup for peak to where you're still going to hit your transit time targets for your customers, those cutoffs before holidays, and then making sure that also your retailers are stocked up and ready to go, and that your product is on shelves on time, especially during Q3 before peak. So it's a year-round planning exercise, but obviously most of the time everyone's thinking about it last minute.
Definitely, yeah. And that's a great point. I think that there's a lot of talk about when brands should really start preparing for peak, and everyone kind of has a different take on that, whether it's like you said all year round, or if it's we got to start prepping in Q3. What's your take on that? I mean, each of you have a different role you play in this, but what do you advise your brands to start prepping for peak?
I think I'm with Brennan here. Like, and one could really argue, like, when are you not preparing for peak? Because Q1, maybe you take a like a little bit of a breather, but then you really should be evaluating what went wrong last peak and what can I do to change the outcome for the next year, right? So like there's the micro decisions and the macro decisions. A lot of people run into, okay, our 3PL really was not the right partner for us. And so they need to start evaluating 3PLs. And then, you know, in Q2, you really need to start looking at that vendor mix. Are we using the right carriers? Or did they hit our SLAs? And all this ties back to peak performance in a lot of ways. Q3, you start executing on those, and somehow you're already back in peak cycle. And you need to be thinking about exactly what Brendan was saying, forecasting your shipments and making sure your partners know what your forecast is so they can plan their, you know, to make sure that they have the air freight prepared and like that they have the trucks, the LTLs that will pick up, etc. That was a really long-winded answer to just agree with you and say I think it's all year round exercise.
Sure. Yeah, and I think one thing that, as you mentioned, you have to really evaluate as a brand is like, how can I lean on my partners to help me and support me in this process? I think when you think about like from a brand perspective, what are the things they should be looking out for the most, like when they come to you? Like, should they lean on you to help them with like the actual guidance of peak? Is it more of just that whole, where do you guys play in that, and where do you ask the brands to come to you for help?
Can start. I think it's really helpful to just work with your partners and make sure that you're looking at more than just one scenario or one option. So, having a game plan that your partners are bought into or at least aware of. For instance, we work with a lot of our clients on carrier strategy, and everyone has their favorite carrier. But understanding what would you do if something happens, or if the environment changes, and just having like a plan B and a plan C and understanding the financial impact of those is really important. And that's going back to what Kat mentioned on just, being in a high level of communication with your partners.
Michael, think you want to say something that looks like?
I didn't know if you would ask another question, but just going back to sort of the original point, there's when should you start preparing for the peak season, and then there's when do you start preparing for the peak season. And again, I've seen a lot over a couple decades in ecom. I've been on the private brand side, the private equity side, with a bunch of 8 and 9 and 10 figure brands, and I can tell you that I still remember days working with large 9-figure brands who the CEO was calling up the team on Wednesday night before Thanksgiving saying, what should we do for Black Friday? So if you're not doing it, you're not alone. If you're not prepared in August, like we all would love every brand to be, you're not alone. But I do think it's prioritizing certain things that have to get done, making sure that you are communicating as early as you can with both your vendors and your internal team around a general strategy, and then rely on those vendors to help execute these plans. Like, at least I'm sure it goes for all of you, but I know with us, like, we try and take on as much of the load from our brand partners as we can, because we know that they have so much on their plate during this peak season. We know if we leave it all to them, they're going to struggle to get it done on time. So the more we actually can take off their plate, from creative to strategy to all of those things, the more likely we are to all be set up for success. So I would encourage brands to at least think broad strokes. What are the strategies as early as possible? Start communicating those to your vendors, even if you don't have the exact, precise plans dialed in, and then be working collaboratively with them to make sure you're executing as early and effectively as you can.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure you guys see this at QuickBooks as well, where we ask for forecasts, and you would be surprised the brands that have them and maybe the smallest ones and the brands that don't. And you're like,
Totally.
wow, you guys are. They're just like, oh, we kind of think this, or the Excel files that they'll give you can differ from like 2 lines to like this crazy model.
Totally.
And yeah, and then on the carrier side, I feel for you, because it's like one level displaced, where sometimes we don't have the best forecasts coming in, and then the forecasts we publish are sometimes not very accurate at all. And it sure is helpful when you have partners that can be flexible.
Yeah. And like you said about the contingency planning, I think in peak, something's always going to go wrong. You can be as prepared as possible, but I think the best way to prepare is just knowing that something will go wrong and being okay with it and rolling with those punches.
Have everyone's cell phone number.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No
that's a
one is
strategy.
taking Black Friday off, okay? It's not a real holiday anymore.
No,
So
definitely
with
not.
Halloween kind of wrapping up here, let's talk about like nightmares. Have you guys seen any nightmares going into Black Friday peak season that you've experienced in your career that kind of haunt you when it comes around at this time?
Oh man, there's a ton of them. I mean, one was like what I just mentioned, where CEO of a massive brand was still thinking about what to run for Black Friday, like Wednesday before. That happens a lot. I mean, products going out of stock that you don't expect way earlier for that's the hero product you were about to launch in a campaign. Tech issues come up. I've been in situations where we had to make a last minute, we needed to make a last minute adjustment to something on the website. And this was not, this was pre Shopify. And all the engineers go, well, we can't do that. That takes like 48 hours for us to just even push live. So, yeah, Kat, I think you mentioned it. Having as many contingency plans as you can. You can't predict everything, but I think one is having as many contingency plans as you can for what you know. And then also just having a really collaborative environment. We would always set up war rooms around Black Friday and just keep all the sort of key stakeholders in one place so that you could work through problems live and collaboratively has always been a big help there.
I think like having prepping your team morale and team like readiness to wrap their heads around knowing that this is just going to be a grind really helps. Like everyone is willing to jump in and because you've been prepping all year, like you guys, this is the time where we have to bring our A game. You might have to work a few more hours, but we're all going to get through it together. We're all in the trenches together. um,
Totally. Especially if they're coming from outside ecom, you really got to warn them what it's like. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. As soon as they're hired, it's like, think about how many days we have until Black Friday.
Yeah, and
This is
whatever you
important.
think, how crazy you think it's gonna be a lot more than that. So just like mentally prepare yourself.
Yeah,
That's the one thing we can always rally around is doing that post-mortem after peak, with partners, with clients, and figuring out what didn't go well. And usually everyone's pretty passionate about not wanting to go through that again.
Right.
And so while it's still fresh, is a great time to like get the team together and say, hey, we're going to do this and commit to it. And so that's always kind of a cathartic post-peak period of time.
yeah. So knowing that it comes around once a year, is it a sadist or a masochist? I can't remember which one, where you like put
Go through it
yourself
again.
in a position to go through the same thing.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. But I think nightmare for us in shipping was, well, the boom of e-commerce due to COVID was definitely a trend that I think all of us saw. But on the logistics side, especially going internationally, it was a little bit of a nightmare because, there were less flights happening and, international shipments go on planes to go over the ocean. And I think it was like peak of 2020, USPS to move air freight to like Australia. They couldn't buy the air freight because it was too expensive. They literally put things on boats. And I think those took like 3 months to get there. And there was just nothing we could do. It was like, we don't control that lane. It went postage and they decided to put it on a boat. So hopefully you get whatever you wanted for Christmas in 3 months.
Yeah, well, I guess it's a good segue. So when we look at kind of how you prepare yourself and your brands, I guess from the international shipping side, do you have certain cutoff dates that you share with them? Like, hey, we're going into peak. Here's when you have to have these orders in to make sure they get to X, Y, or Z country.
Yeah, we do. And I think we try to share them late September, honestly, to allow our brands for as much time as possible, maybe mid-October at the latest, to really start to think about their marketing strategies and when to time certain things to make sure that their brands or their customers can get things in time.
Yeah. And how consultative are you, Michael, to the marketing side? And they're looking at campaigns to have and these direct mailers when they have sales going on or they have certain initiatives they want to kick off. How involved are you guys in that process of helping them?
We're real involved. We do most of the work for most of our brands. We have thousands of brands on the platform, and we probably do the creative and execution for 95+% of them. Mostly because we know what works. We've done this a million times, and we're set up to do it really efficiently and effectively. And we want to set the brands up for success. But in terms of hitting, you were asking before about timing of things. And that's crucial for us because we still need approvals from the brands, on final strategy, final creative approvals, all of those things. And obviously there's time. You have to account for the time it takes to deliver a piece of mail to someone's home, and the fact that it needs to arrive prior to, if it's a Black Friday sale, it needs to arrive a few days prior on Friday in case they don't, check their mail or buy it instantly. So a ton of planning goes into all the logistics of making sure that brands understand deadlines. And secret, don't tell anybody, we set deadlines a little before where the actual drop dead yet. I don't think that's I think a few other people picked up on that. But yeah, because we all know how this goes. We all know that everybody's going to be scrambling at the last minute to get their everything approved, shipments out, whatever it might be. So we want to allow a little bit of buffer time. But yeah, we run our own production facilities too. So literally printing out millions of cards a day. And if everybody wants to send their Black Friday campaign all on the exact same day, there is a physical capacity constraint, as I'm sure there is for you all, particularly on the fulfillment side. If everybody wanted to ship their package on exactly the same day, you would probably struggle to make that happen. So yeah, there's a lot of coordination that goes into corralling brands to hit deadlines and manage their schedules effectively.
Yeah, for sure. And then Brennan, there's lots that you're looking at from the finance side. I mean, not only are you looking at the peak season surcharges, but also advising our brands about, hey, we need to make sure our inventory is accurate so you don't have stockouts in these places. But then also your labor flexing as well. So talk to us a bit more about that and how we prepare our brands.
With the forecasting, like Kat and then even Michael have touched on, right? We know there's going to be an increase and a flux, but understanding the extent and then the time period helps us plan in advance, right? Time always helps. It also helps us ask the questions of like, what are your objectives, right? What are the hot SKUs you're going to move, like Michael mentioned. Let's look at our demand planning forecast and make sure that we actually have enough inventory to take you all the way through peak, but also post peak, so that you don't have periods of interruption after you blow through everything in your sales. I think our team does an amazing job of working on the people side because the more continuity we have with our team on the floor, typically the higher level of service we can provide. On the parcel side, typically it's understanding what are those nuances of this year's peak. Some years there's been peak surcharges domestically, some years there's not. That's something that you can't really front load. You can't start talking about that in April because no one knows what it's going to be. So as soon as that starts hitting, getting on the horn with your partners, saying, hey, like, what do we want to do? What are our transit time targets? What are the levers we're willing to pull? Which, at least for us, we can provide blended solutions. We manage this with the data. We can show you what it says and what we think it's going to do, and ultimately, put the choice in the client's hands.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think you guys have a lot of great insights that, brands can look at and really think about when they're coming into the peak season. We have a few weeks. I'm sure that a lot of the brands have started planning. And as to Michael's point, there's some that probably haven't gotten there quite yet, but should start if they haven't. But looking post peak, what are you guys excited for, whether it be in the industry at your company? What are you looking forward to in 2025?
Well, I think one recommendation I have for brands as you come out of Black Friday in particular is you need to engineer a second purchase for those customers that you acquired over Black Friday. And I think not enough brands pay enough attention to that fact. They think that they're gearing up for Black Friday and that's like the event, and then everything sort of after that is just whatever happens. But the challenge that a lot of brands don't recognize is when they look at the revenue that they made on Black Friday and it looks great, and then they look at the profit that they made on Black Friday and they're like, it's typically because customer acquisition costs are higher and you're offering your biggest discounts of the year, so that chips away at your margins, and you realize you didn't make a lot of money. All the money that you make off of this comes by getting those customers you acquired over this period to come back. And I think you can't leave that to chance. You need to engineer it. It comes with delivering a great customer experience, which I think all of us are in the business of providing. And then it comes with teeing up those marketing efforts so that Black Friday is really only the start of your holiday and post-holiday marketing effort. It's what are you going to do to drive that second purchase especially through your own channels, trying to get people to come back, make that second purchase, presumably at less of a discount, and without having to pay the initial customer acquisition cost again, and carry that forward through the end of the year, and then certainly into 2025. A lot of brands, particularly in the health and wellness and self-improvement space, the Q1 is called Q5 because it's as big as the holiday season. And so again, what can you be thinking about coming out of that Black Friday period to really keep that momentum and build upon it and really drive a lot of the profitability that you would hope for the rest of the year?
I love the Q5 term.
I didn't
Yeah,
make it up. I take no credit for that.
we wouldn't have known. We wouldn't have known. Um, but yeah, no, definitely. I think we loved seeing the Q5 too. I'm sure you guys do. And I'm definitely, coming from this at a very ops heavy perspective. But I think something going back to the question that I'm really excited about that Passport is working on is something a little closer to helping what Post-Pilot does on kind of like helping our customers grow internationally. We launched a new product this year called Passport Global, and it really is, a comprehensive solution that is more on the internationalization side. Like, so how do we help, your shopping cart? How do we help you with your marketing efforts? How do we help you target these international customers who might be a different profile? For example, in the UK, they're used to seeing that like packaged into your Shopify cart versus like at the end where it might be a little bit of a sticker shock. So how can we help, do that on your website and help, create growth in your international markets where you might not have been thinking about before. So for example, we took a brand, Carpe, from less than 5% to over 10% of their total, or took international from less than 5% to over 10% of their international revenue this year. Or, someone else doubled their international GMV in 1 year just by working with us and working with this new product. So we're really excited about how it has been proving in the market and what it means for the rest of our customers. So yeah, definitely on the internet or on the ops side, I'm like, just more packages for me to deal with. And I'm so excited about that. But this is definitely something that we are growing into over just shipping.
It's exciting.
I
Brennan?
love the international growth because lots of times, everyone pays attention to domestic and they don't realize
Totally.
that there's all this untapped market out there. And it is a little more complicated, but there's great solutions like Passport that can make it a lot more seamless. On the QuickBox side, I'm excited for 2025 because we're continuing to grow. It's exciting to be able to like increase your service offering and your solutions. So like, we're expanding geographically. We're developing technologies that help it make it easier for our clients to have their product in more places closer to the end customer. We know that shipping is getting more expensive every year, and in many areas getting slower at the same time. So getting closer is important for a variety of factors. And being able to have the footprint, but also the technology to do it, to me, is probably the most exciting thing for us.
And if you guys are expanding to international warehouses, we are building products to work with you guys there too, because we want to be with our customers as they grow. So,
I love it, right? We all want to not have any customers outgrow us, right? As a service
100%.
provider, so usually that's part of the mission for sure.
Yeah, I think that peak is a great time to showcase that too. I mean, we're seeing so much order spike, and to show that we can really handle it from all aspects of this call really proves to the client that we're that partner to look at when things do scale. So if that peak season ends up being the new norm and they have, an overnight kind of win, if this is our volume, then it's great to show we have capability to be alongside there with them. And like Brennan mentioned, we have we have some plans for growth as well with the company. We have a new warehouse in Dallas. So we haven't got to international quite yet, but it's on our footprint. So we are very excited.
Work with you in Dallas too.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit to lead this call on a fun note. So I know we just got out of the Halloween season, but we're heading into the Thanksgiving season. So I wanted to ask you guys some trivia questions regarding Thanksgiving. Maybe you can share these with your folks at the dinner table in a few weeks here. So we'll go ahead and get started with the first of 5 questions that I have prepared for us today. So does anyone know what year the first Thanksgiving was celebrated?
I would just embarrass myself making a guess.
I
This
should
is
put
like
time
going
on
way
this.
back in the history books. I'm too old to remember this stuff.
It's okay if it's wrong. It's whoever's closest wins.
1700.
Okay.
16. I don't know. 1776 they signed the Constitution, right? So it'd be earlier than I don't know. Somewhere
Yeah.
in 1600.
1600.
I'll I'll do like the Price is Right thing. I can't say like $1, but I'll say like 1,500. I have no idea.
Perfect. We're all taking a.
Yeah.
Exactly. Just so we get some spread in the answer.
There you go.
Yeah.
One of us has to be right with a 100-year margin.
Right. Exactly.
Kat, you were the closest. 1621 was the first Thanksgiving.
Great.
Next question is, which president made Thanksgiving a national holiday?
We just sounded so smart and intelligent
Right.
talking about what we
Totally.
did, and now it's
Yeah.
Okay, you got the last one right, so you still are.
Where's ChatGPT?
These are people that are leading companies and teams.
Right.
All right, I'm gonna throw out George Washington there.
Abraham Lincoln.
Adam.
I think that Kat is trying to suck you guys out. That was actually correct, Kat. So I think that she actually knows the answers, but she wants to be humble.
No, I really do not. You guys.
Wow, impressive.
Let's see if you're going to be 3 for 3. Which U.S. state is the largest producer of turkey?
Connecticut.
Texas,
No one got that one, so he killed Kat. It's actually Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Okay. I don't even know what climate they live in. I got nothing.
Nothing but-
Yeah.
Is it a
In
natural
what year?
producer, or is it just somehow they've like taken the monopoly of turkey producing, you know?
I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. I figured it'd be like some sort of Midwestern or Southern state just from farmland, but I don't know how natural it is if they farm them all on that site in Minnesota or if they source them from everywhere else and just do it. But not too sure on that.
It's the most common pet in Minnesota as well.
You don't have a turkey in your backyard?
All right, number 4. In what year did Macy's begin their annual Thanksgiving Day parade?
1912.
I'll say, I don't know, 40, 19.
I'll do 1950.
It'll be 100 years this year, 1924.
Wow.
Yeah, so it should be a big one. All right, and then last question is, how many turkeys are cooked in America each Thanksgiving?
Man,
Or good market size this? Like, how many families are there in the US?
I feel like this is one of those interview questions where they
Yeah,
like have to
like
make how many
consulting
windows are there in New
Yeah.
York and stuff
None
like
of us
that.
can work at McKinsey.
Yeah, exactly.
30 million is what I'll say.
Good number. I'll say
How many-
50.
How many people there? Yeah.
I'm not telling you because you're ahead.
Okay. 75.
75. Okay, I think Michael's the closest, 46 million
All right.
turkey a year. So that wraps up our trivia. I guess Kat is the winner, so congratulations. I'm happy for you. But any final things we want to share with our brands out here about Peak or anything else we want to share for the rest of the year in general?
We're right there with you. All of us. I think just expect the unexpected, but as long as you have contingency plans and thought about it, you know, we're gonna get through it.
I appreciate having, like partners on the call today just because load balancing is a big piece of dealing with, big fluctuations in business, and having a close relationship with not only your service providers but your partners is a lot of how QuickBooks has seen, a lot of success in weathering the storm.
Got any questions on direct mail and adding it to your marketing stack? Reach out. Happy to help.
Yeah, and
Michael,
on that note, let's go ahead and drop some social plugs. Where can our brands find you? Michael, go ahead and start us off.
You can email me, Michael at Postpilot. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn. Just look me up, Michael FC. I'm there.
Yeah. People can shoot me an email. It's kat@passportshipping.com. Happy to answer any questions about your packages, even if they're not ours. And yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not very active on the internet. But
I'm behind the scenes on all the QuickBooks social out there, including LinkedIn, but also I'm b@quickbox.com. I typically talk with my clients about parcel shipping, and sometimes I nerd out about accounting.
Awesome. Love it. Well, thank you all for joining us on this call today and sharing your insights and experiences. We wish all of our brands a super exciting and successful peak season this year. And I want to thank you all for joining our first ever Unpacking E-commerce podcast. Thank you so much, guys.
See you guys later.